Welcome to the Summer of Stories, an interview series that goes behind the brands of entrepreneurs who were the first to do it in their families, communities, and/or industries, and uncovering the stories that embolden them to get it done. I'm Gabrielle Gwyneth, and our guest today is Judge Carol, the creator, executive producer, and presiding judge of Justice with Judge Carol, the first court TV show in the Bahamas. Judge Carol retired from the Bahamian Judiciary in 2022 and served for 14 years in 3 of the 4 judicial levels in the Bahamas. Before her judicial appointments, she worked as a counsel and attorney for over 20 years and across the spectrum of courtroom practice, including founding her own law firm, Misiewicz Co. Since her formal retirement from the judiciary, and in addition to developing her TV show, Judge Carol works as a legal consultant at renowned Bahamian law firm Higgs Johnson. She is also my mom. Welcome, Mummy. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a privilege to be here. Thank you.
So let's dive right into it. I am excited for this conversation because we're going to talk about things that we don't even talk about naturally sort of in the day-to-day of our lives. So the first thing I want you to do is take us back to that moment when you decided to have a TV show, when you dreamt of being Judge Carol, and let us know what inspired you and why did you want to make it happen?
Okay, so I wanted to come out of the judiciary. I wanted to leave to do something else, and I really didn't know what that was. And so I spent quite a number of months, even actually a couple of years, thinking about leaving and what I would do. And I knew that I had big goals, right? Anyway, so basically, right before the sort of cutoff deadline of when I was going to be retiring, I thought, I think I can do. I thought I'd watched, the American television series with Judge Judy and People's Court, and so I was familiar with those. And I thought, well, hey, I love being dramatic. Okay, I have a dramatic side, notwithstanding, being a judge. And I thought I could do that. Why don't I try that? And actually, had mentioned it to me more than a decade ago. You should do a courtroom. You should try something like that. And I was like, oh, no, that's not for me. Can you still hear me, by the way?
Yeah, you're good. Oh, no. Well.
Okay, that was odd.
Anyway, your friend said that you should do a show, and you said,
yeah. So my friend, and that was like over a decade ago, and I was like, oh, no, I could never do that. I thought, oh, that might be fun, but I was a sitting magistrate at the time also, and it was completely out of the question. And I thought, well, I could combine my experience. So when I thought about it again, I thought I could combine my experience as a judge with my flair for the dramatic, and I thought I would be great at that. So that was like around November and December of the year before in 21. And then I thought about it. And so then a few more months went by while I was trying to figure out, how would I actually get around to doing this thing? And what would be the sort of legal and political hurdles that I would have to get over? So there was some of that going on, right? In sort of behind the scenes in preparation. And then I remember the moment when I thought, you know what? Yes, I really am going to do this. So I went from thinking, oh, that would be fun, I could do that, to then thinking, I will do that, right? And I remember I was on vacation. I was in Virginia visiting my girlfriend. It was in February of 2022. And I was, listening to a podcast, and they were talking about going all in on your dreams. And I was like, yes, I am going to do this. And then I freaked out. I was just like, am I actually going to do this? And so I was in in my girlfriend's house, in the bedroom, on vacation. And when I made the commitment to myself that I was going to go all in and I was going to do this, I just freaked out. Like, I was just like, oh, I'm going to do this. Okay. And then I had no idea how it would happen or anything. So but that was the moment. I made the commitment, I made the decision, and there was no going back from then.
Yeah. So you had no experience doing any kind of production on film, on TV, or even sort of content. Like you never had a YouTube channel, you didn't do any
Right.
social media stuff.
Correct.
How did that impact your vision of it happening and it being possible? Was that part of the reason why you were freaking out?
No, I didn't know anything about that. So it was one of those things like when you don't know what you don't know. I mean, social media and that stuff wasn't even on my radar. So remember now, I come from a very conservative background. I mean, any way you slice it and dice it, my background is conservative. Okay. My parents, your grandparents, were civil servants. They were senior civil servants. And we didn't have a flamboyant lifestyle or anything. And also very sort of strict religious kind of family background. Not that I didn't feel that that was like a negative impact. I'm just saying that sort of framework. So civil servant parents, people who were employed as public servants. They were employees. They weren't entrepreneurs. So I didn't come from an entrepreneurial background. As a lawyer and as a judge, having been a judge for 14 years, it requires you to be conservative, at least in this country. Most countries, judges are not flamboyant people. You're not out there to get business. You're there to serve, right? And so there is a persona of being a judge that is conservative, calm, and that kind of thing. So it was so my background was conservative, and so part of the freak out, I was trying to remember what the original question was. So part of the freak out was that it would take me outside of my comfort zone of everything that I knew. Safe, having been an employed person, except for the period when I had my law firm, but basically I'd been an employee of some kind. I had been in a role that was conservative. And now we're talking about going on television. What? So, it was, yeah. So that social media part of it didn't even come into it. And then I thought, oh, okay, well, when I went into my business, so when I established the Misiewicz Co law firm, I did a business proposal and I went to the bank and I got funding, the funding that I needed to start up the new business, having done, got an accountant and run the numbers and all of that. So I thought I'd do the same thing with this show. I thought I'd do a business proposal, run the numbers, and go out there and get sponsors to fund, this creation of this television show, which obviously I was like, this is the best thing since sliced bread for the Bahamas. Obviously, I'm going to get sponsors. So I sat down and I went to work and I put together an awesome business proposal. I still refer to it from time to time over the course of the period. And I put together this awesome business proposal. And then I went out there to get sponsors. And I don't know if it was, naivete or what, but, I was looking for $50,000 to start this new program, which I knew my experience. I was very confident. I'm very confident in my skill set, my ability. So I thought it was a no-brainer. Everyone was very polite. I went to a number of companies and they were all very polite. And they said, oh, this is a lovely idea, but, we've met our numbers already for the year. We've hit our targets, or we don't have any funding this budget cycle, maybe next budget cycle, or whatever was the story. But basically, everybody told me no. Okay. I sent dozens upon dozens upon dozens of emails. I kind of walked the pavement, went, called up, got meetings with this company, company A, company B, C, D, down the line. I had multiple meetings and everybody loved the idea, but nobody gave me a dime. So that was like, okay, then what am I going to do? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you walk us through a little bit more of how that journey went? So the lack of production wasn't necessarily your first hurdle. It was, how am I going to get a contract? So it was, I think you said, the beginning of 2022 when you started developing the proposal, going through the process. And obviously it wasn't right away. So how long eventually until you got a signed contract?
Right. So it was a year actually from, so in 2022, when I had the idea, when I made the decision to pursue that goal to create the television show, and I spent several months trying to get sponsors, realizing, as time went on, that I wasn't getting the sponsors, but I continued to put the pieces in place as I could, sort of out of pocket. And so, and then I pitched to one local television station, like late summer of 22. And they loved the idea. They were like, oh, okay, great. And we did a screen test and all of that. And but then they stopped short of committing, right? They said, oh yes, this would be perfect for our new lineup, da da da. But then I keep calling and keep emailing, and they just kept sort of putting me off. And then finally I realized by sort of October, November, I was like, okay, they're not going to come through for me, because I'd kind of hung back waiting, thinking, yes, we're just about to sign. So at the beginning of, what I decided then was to continue pitching myself, while part of the process of me growing the business was realizing that although I was confident in my ability, people kind of didn't really know who I was. Unless you came into my courtroom, either in the Magistrates Court or at the Supreme Court, unless you came into my courtroom, people didn't know who I was. And so I also realized around that time that I needed to boost my visibility. So I started doing radio appearances and getting speaking engagements throughout the community, offering my services for free and letting people hear me and see me. So whatever I was able to do, whenever I had an opportunity, I would go to community meetings, women's meetings. I would travel to the Family Islands. I would travel to Eleuthera and speak at town hall meetings. I would coordinate with people on the ground and do that kind of thing, and really began boosting my visibility, going on talk shows on the local radio station. I went on a couple of different stations doing talk shows, just putting myself out there, making myself available. So several months later now, after I had started this process, I approached another television station, and they were like, oh yes, we love this idea. And by that time, also, I had built up some more assets. So when I first went to the sponsors, so like April, May, June, when I first went to the sponsors, all I had was my experience, my persona, my professional experience, and a business plan on paper. By the time I went to, and then it was pretty much the same thing. Maybe I had slightly more when I went to the first radio station. So fast forward now the following year, and I approached the other television station. I've been on air. I've been out in the public eye. I've built up my assets. So I've designed and had built my own television set. I've created my own television jingle. I've designed my website and my logo. So I had a lot more assets to bring to the table. And even though I didn't have a sponsor, I had these other hard assets to bring. So when I went to the television station, I had, I guess, basically a lot more bargaining power then. I had more, I was in a stronger position. And so we had some conversations, we had a negotiation, and then they offered me the contract. So it was like, wow, this is great. I have a contract, yay.
Yeah, that is amazing. And can we pause for a little bit and talk about, or rewind and talk about you getting no after no? You said you sent dozens upon dozens of emails, and then it sounds like you assessed what was working, what wasn't working, and strategically what would lend you an advantage, and that was to increase your visibility. But then you also mentioned that you built a set and you had a logo and a jingle. Like, you invested in this project.
Yes.
And you still had
Yes.
no sponsors, you had no contract, you had no sort of time horizon even.
Mhm.
What kept you going, and did you ever think about giving up?
I never thought about giving up. And I think that it ties back to that moment in February on vacation at my girlfriend's house, because it was such a powerful moment for me. I remember it so clearly. Once I made that decision, like, that was it. That was final. That was like written in stone or whatever. I was like, this is it. Because, yeah, I had thought of doing a couple of things, and so I thought about like being a professional full-time consultant, and I had tested the waters in that area as well. And there was some, and I didn't get any good feedback from that. And I was like, well, this isn't really what I want to do anyway. But yeah, I never wavered. I just kept trying different things, because I think, and I still do, I always believed that it was going to work. I believed in the value of the idea. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking about, like on other podcasts and coaching programs that I've been in, when you really believe in the thing, you don't waver back and forth, because it's like, just like I know my name is Judge Carol, my name is Carol, and I'm Judge Carol. I don't have to decide tomorrow, or try and figure out, is that really who I am? I may grow into the person, but I'm not going back to being somebody different. I mean, that's just it. I believe that's it, and this is going to work. And whatever way it's going to work out, then that's different, but it's going to work.
That is so powerful. And it makes me wonder if there were other instances in your life before you came up with the desire to have this TV show that cultivated that belief in yourself, or, you have an idea and you make it happen without any evidence, or was this the first time?
Well, no, I mean, I think having my law firm was definitely a clear instance of that. So I guess, as a general statement, what I'll say is sometimes we survey the landscape. We look at what other people are doing, and we can think, oh, I want that, or I want to do that, or that's not for me. And you look over there and you think, oh, I want something like that, but I want it this way, that kind of thing. So when I was in my first stint as a deputy registrar, and I used to have lawyers who were a lot younger than I was appear before me. So I'm the judge. These are young lawyers who started out a business on their own with far less experience than I have, and they were making it work. And I used to look at them and think, well, if they could do it, surely I can do it. And so I made the decision, and I decided that I would start my own law firm, and from scratch. So I was already, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years in as a lawyer at that point. So what happens a lot is with lawyers, they'll be with a law firm, and then they'll leave that law firm as an associate or a partner, and they'll take their clients and go and set up shop elsewhere. But they already have clients. They've been in the business and they have clients. So in my case, I wanted to start my own law firm, but I wasn't with a firm, and I didn't have any clients, because of course, as a judge, you don't have clients. You're literally just there, available to receive and hear cases. But I decided that I was like, well, if they can do it, I must be can do it. And I remember very clearly. So I did the groundwork, and I formed I registered the name and so on. And as I mentioned, I did the business plan. My dad was alive at the time, and he had an office space and he said I could use it. And I decided, I think it was like November 7th or something. I I went to work, or I just, I said, like the week before, I was like, okay, next week is going to be the day that I open. And so on November 7th, 2007, or whatever it was, my law firm started, because that was the day. I had 0 clients, 0 money, nothing. But I said, I've opened my law firm with nothing, no clients, nothing. And it turned out to be very successful, So I have that experience. There are probably others, but that's a major one for me, where I just made a decision, went after it, and made it work.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I want to talk about the gap between your expectation of what creating the show would be like and then the reality. So you go through this whole process, you finally get a contract, you have all these assets, and then it's taping day, the first taping day, and getting ready for taping day. What was that like versus what you might have imagined, and what's the learning curve been there for you?
Okay. Well, that was a super scary kind of experience, because I did a lot of, once I had the contract, and then the station eventually notified me that we want to tape on X date. And so I had, well, from the time really that I had the contract, I started canvassing to get people to be on the show, to get cases, right? And I was doing a lot of legwork for that. That was definitely something new. And I sort of dabbled in the social media at that time, but I was very uncomfortable. And so I wasn't using social media. I was using traditional methods. Advertising. I printed up cards, like postcard type things. I had my nieces and nephews handing them out in the parking lot at the courthouse, sticking them on cars and that kind of thing. I don't know, they may have even stood in the street, put ads in the newspaper. I spoke with different process servers and offered them like an incentive if they would let people know about it. And the reasoning behind that was, with process servers, they are paid when they serve summonses. So if I wanted to sort of match that interest and investment that they make when they go out and serve summonses, I thought, well, if I gave them some of my flyers as well, and offered them a small incentive to give out the flyers and let people know that it was available. And I also thought that because they knew me as a magistrate, the officers who had served, they would kind of be able to vouch for me in terms of my credibility. So I thought that my credibility, my experience as a magistrate would have sort of stood for something and persuaded people to come on, as well as I also promoted it on air. I went on television shows and told people about it. And the day kept getting closer and closer and closer, and I didn't have anybody. I had a phone number, a WhatsApp line, and nobody was biting. And so a couple of the people, it might have been on the ZNS side, it might have been my producer, someone had suggested, well, for at least for us to create the pilot, why don't you use some actors to, at least for us to create the pilot? And the thinking was that once it was on air and on television, and people would see this thing and see that it was really happening, that then the floodgates would open and people would come forward, right? So I really capitulated in the sense that I was so strongly against the idea. I was like, no, I'm sure people are going to come. And then I was looking at like the American shows and, with real cases. And I was like, I was so busy trying to be like them. And I felt like I really felt like I was selling out actually in using the actors, because I'd been pitching in my business plan and talking to companies that I was having, real cases and real people. And it was almost like that was like a hook, in the sense that people were like, they wanted to see, is it really going to happen? Can you do that? And sponsors were going to be like, okay, well, if you can get them, then we might come on board. So I was very much opposed to the idea. But at the same time, I couldn't have, in my thinking was, I don't want the taping day to come and then I don't have anything. So I was like, okay, then I gave in sort of at the last moment, close enough to the date. So my producer got connected with some actors, and we used the real cases from Magistrates Court that I was able to get. It was actually a combination, I think, of people writing in with different scenarios, but then saying, can you help us out? But then not themselves coming forward. So we used actors for the pilot. And it was very, very well received. And it was, so much was happening. I mean, you were asking me like, sort of like what it was like and coming up to the taping date. So really, I was just having anxiety because it's like, we're taping, I was like, I've made this promise. I'm not going to be keeping my promise. So I barely even really like enjoyed the experience, because I was so busy trying to make this thing to be what I had said it was going to be. And then it wasn't going to be that. And so I didn't really enjoy it that much. And it wasn't like excitement and anticipation and ooh. It was like, okay, then, and let's get it done. And okay, I've delivered and we got the pilot. And I kept thinking, and my thought was, okay, well, once we do this, then yes, I'm going to be able to get, people to come on, and so on and so on. So I was really looking to the next, using it as a means to an end, and having the anxiety and looking to what would happen next.
Yeah. And then what happened after you got the first episode done?
So it has taken me, just to kind of start at the end of the process, and then I'll go back to the beginning. It's really taking me the whole season to come around to the idea and to accept that this is a good model, and that it's okay that it is working in the way that it's working. So we taped the pilot, and then the television station, the way that it worked out was that my TV show was part of a whole, it ended up being part of a whole rebranding and relaunching of the TV station, of the ZNS TV station, with having a new lineup of shows and a new look and a new feel. And they got a new general manager in. So the television station had a massive launch party, a launch event. And my show, the pilot, clips from my pilot were featured in that launch event. And talk about massive. I mean, it was a room with, I don't know, hundreds, 200, 500 people. It was a huge ballroom. They had a massive screen set up. And what they were doing was they'd do an introduction, and then they'd show clips from each of the new shows that were in the station's lineup. Well, that room lit right up when they showed the clips from the Judge Carroll pilot. Oh, and that felt so good. I can tell you, first of all, just walking into the room, because I knew then, and I always know, and every time we tape and I walk off set, I'm like, yeah, I did it again. I mean, no question. I know it. I did it. So we've already taped for season 2. We're halfway through taping episodes for that. I mean, and those are rock solid. They are so good. But I can tell you, when I walked into that room, I had on this amazing suit. I had done my hair done and makeup done, and it was a launch thing. And it was like, oh yeah, I reached. This is gonna be good. And then when the whole room erupted, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
This now, this is it. This is it.
that's so
So
exciting.
and that really, really felt good. It really
Yeah,
felt
yeah. So I remember that day. I remember the launch party happening. For
good.
those of you who don't know, I live in Scotland, so I wasn't able to be there, but it was super exciting. And I remember, everyone, social media talking about it, getting messages on WhatsApp, and then the build up, the anticipation for the full airing of the pilot and then the
Mhm.
episodes after that. And it's just been this groundswell of support. It seems like it's just growing and your popularity is growing, and now people are recognizing you in the street and recognizing your voice. And what's
Yeah.
that been like for you? And did you have that in mind when you were like, I'm going to do a TV show? Did you think, ooh, then I'm going to give up some of my privacy because I'll be like a celebrity?
Yeah, I was up for the excitement of it. I thought it would be cool, right? And so far it's cool. It's not been oppressive. Um, I guess in a sense it's still early days, but it's been very exciting as the show. So it's been a combination of things in the sense that, remember I had said that I was having anxiety and being conflicted in the sense that I felt like I was a sellout because the way that it worked out wasn't my original plan and the way that I'd been pitching it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it took me a while really to just kind of settle into the fact that it was okay and I could enjoy it. So I wasn't enjoying the moment. I was slightly embarrassed. A lot of times people would say they liked it. I was like, oh, you like it? Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. And, keep watching. But I wasn't really fully emotionally there because um, I was still feeling guilty about
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And then gradually I've come around to a place where this model is working. It's good. I like it. And yes, people are definitely loving it and they're recognizing me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am accepting the recognition, I think. Yeah, it's like, it's okay for me to actually enjoy it. I think
Yeah.
before I was like, you shouldn't really. So,
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, it's an incredible achievement. And the work that you're doing, not just on the entertainment side, but on the education side, is so
mhm.
important. And we haven't gotten to talk about that yet. And so I would like you to speak to it. And also, I want to reiterate, and you can reiterate as well for everyone watching, that you're using real Bahamian cases from the Bahamian judicial system.
Yeah.
And because you're a judge, and also, I remember you telling me this, you're adjudicating them like blindly yourself. So you're not using that magistrate's judgment in your court. You're just using this as a scenario in your court, and then you decide how you're going to adjudicate the case. So
Yes.
it is still real cases. The actors are all Bahamian people. And didn't you find out that a lot of American courtroom TV shows also use actors?
Yes. So I came to that. I found out that information sometime afterwards. So I am using, so there's a couple of points that you mentioned. Yes, I am using real actual cases. So between cases that people have submitted to me, um, to we did tape a session with only plaintiffs because I did have people. So I did have people inquire with Judge Carroll, with my company, about coming on set, and I have lawyers on my team who are presently, they're like volunteers because I don't have like hired staff, but they work with me. And so we had a number of persons who would reach out. We had some plaintiffs who were willing to come forward. And then when they would reach out to the defendants, I wouldn't do it personally, but my team would. When they would reach out to the defendants would be reluctant to come on. And one thing I'd like to mention in relation to that actually is that is very typical of courtroom experiences as well. There are many times when you would bring a case in Magistrates Court or even Supreme Court, and the plaintiffs would file a claim and there'd be a court date and the defendant wouldn't show up, and then the magistrate would have to hear the case and adjudicate in the absence of the defendant. The difference is in terms of the steps that would follow after and enforcement. So in the arbitration framework, which is the legal framework that the Judge Carroll show operates under, the enforcement of a judgment, the decision is consensual in the sense that the parties agree for me to hear the case. They don't have to agree for a magistrate to hear the case. And there's legislation that allows enforcement to take place. But there are multiple steps that even get to that point. Anyway, I just wanted to illustrate that it's not unusual in my case that only one side would appear. Then you have, so the cases are either cases that people would bring to the Judge Carroll team directly, or that we would source from within the Magistrates Court. And then I look at bringing forward cases that are typical of what happens in the Bahamas, use it to educate people. Because I found, and this was one of my motivations for doing the program as well, as a retired judge walking and moving in and around the community, people often ask me, well, what about this? And why did this happen? You know, you're at a family lunch or at a social event and someone says, well, such and such happened. And how come this, or what do I do? So it allows me that opportunity to educate by selecting those cases that are typical of the kinds of issues that people encounter. I am able to bring forward an explanation of how the law would work in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know that you're clear on the types of cases that you want to feature and the sort of vibe of the show. So for anyone who's not seen the show, can you give a little bit of background on the kinds of cases that you feature and maybe the ones that they shouldn't expect because they fall out of the Judge Carroll brand?
Okay. Yeah. So they're like traffic cases where, you know, car accident damages, property injuries, that kind of thing, landlord and tenant disputes, if there's disputes among family members, or like if there's been a death in the family and what's supposed to happen with property. Then we have something in the Bahamas called ASU, where it's like a savings program voluntarily that someone, usually you have a lead person who manages it. And then there may be disputes as to persons not getting their money, or, you know, that kind of thing. So those generally are the types of cases. I'm not doing things like divorce matters or
paternity.
Yeah. Sorry?
Paternity?
And paternity cases. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not doing those types of matters because I want to, I don't want it to be that it's like salacious and, you know, people looking to see some juicy kind of story. What I'm looking for is being able to help the everyday Bahamians in dealing with situations that they would encounter on a regular basis and having some kind of information. My vision really is that to help people in their understanding of how the law applies in these areas. And then if they do have to go to approach the court system, or if they do need to go to a lawyer to get matters resolved, they have some background understanding of what they can expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that because we're so close to the US and we're familiar with all these US TV shows, there's some misinformation or misunderstanding about how Bahamian law works versus what people will see happening in the US?
Yeah, maybe not even as much as sort of as high or as extensive in terms of misinformation, but it certainly sets up their expectations. And yeah, so I think that just generally, today is Independence Day. We're at our 51st anniversary of independence. And I think it's important for us as we grow and mature as a nation that we should be developing our own jurisprudence, be developing our own culture, be developing our own understanding, and not just depending on what we see abroad in the US or the UK or other territories to inform our process. So if we can inform our own process and our own growth and our own development, and the show can be one aspect of that, of contributing to that growth and development and how we see ourselves and how we see judges and what our expectation is of what the law can do for us and what the law should do for us, then that can help us to develop as a nation. That's what I think.
Definitely. And can you explain what jurisprudence means?
I didn't even realize I used that word. Yeah, so the philosophy of law.
Okay.
So it's, when you have, so there's the law. There are things like the Constitution has principles and it has a philosophy, and the way we treat the way we treat cases, the way we treat people, our attitude towards legal situations. That there is an attitude and a philosophy that is extant in our Constitution. There is the fact that our legal system, there are different kinds of legal systems across the world. There's what is called a common law legal system, which they have in America as well. And probably because they were originally colonized or by England and English people, which has a common law system. And then there's civil law systems that other countries like France and Italy and just other systems. There are other systems. So we have and so the kind of approach, it's a very high level way of looking and analyzing different legal scenarios that applies. And so I get to bring that sort of high level perspective in the explanation and and how the cases develop and are eventually decided.
Wow, that is amazing. And I just want to congratulate you and say this is an exciting opportunity for us as a nation, as you were describing. Now that because of the show, we have the opportunity to think about our jurisprudence and to learn about what is already there and how we might want it to move forward and what we like or dislike. And it would help with things like referendums, I would imagine, in the future and other legislative changes. So
yeah, I just thought as just to sort of not necessarily finish the thought, but to extend the thought slightly. It occurred to me, and it occurs to me, so I have 35 years of experience in the law, practicing law in the Bahamas, particularly as a courtroom lawyer. And I love breaking down the law and explaining the law. I never really wanted to be a teacher, but I love teaching the law and about the law. And I see this really as an opportunity for me to bring the vast experience and understanding of the law and legal system in the Bahamas to the public, and in a much bigger way than I could by practicing and dealing with cases one-on-one. And I love doing it. It's very exciting for me. So
yeah. Well, speaking about sort of the law at a high level, what has the reception been like from other lawyers, from your legal peers in your judge peers?
Yes, so it's been really, really good, really good. Initially, there were some concerns expressed that I heard about. So it's like, oh, people aren't happy. People meaning other lawyers. Lawyers aren't happy. And I heard that there had been complaints made to the Bar Association, and I heard that there were some rumblings and complaints, but nobody ever, there wasn't any, no lawyers came out to me and said, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. It's not appropriate. And just a sort of a background to that, in our Legal Profession Act, our Legal Profession Act says that lawyers should not do things that would bring the legal profession into disrepute. Number one. And number two, lawyers are also prohibited from advertising their services in the Bahamas. And so there were some lawyers who felt like if I was doing a law TV show, that would bring the profession into disrepute. And that's why they thought that, I'm assuming that that's why they thought that it was unseemly. And remember too, I started out by saying that I came from a conservative background. So the legal profession is very conservative here. And then there are these legal provisions that says, that you shouldn't do these things that will make the profession undignified, because it is an ancient and honorable profession. And we say that when we take our oaths to be called to the bar, they're always reciting, and we wear our flowing robes and we wear our wigs when we go to court on special occasions. And it's, even though part of it is ceremonial, it also lends itself to the dignity of the profession. And so it was like, oh, you're doing a TV show? It's like, how could you? Oh, poo-poo that, it's so undignified. And so I do try to have like a level of, I don't try to have a level of dignity. I am dignified. When I go into my television courtroom station, when I walk on the set, I'm in that role and I'm in that persona, and that's absolutely natural for me. And then the way that I conduct the cases, I conduct them exactly the way that I did when I had my courtroom in the Supreme Court, in chambers, as well as in Magistrates Court. So yeah, there's this idea that, not to bring the profession into disrepute and to make it undignified, but they have really come around. And I get a lot of support. Lawyers, very senior lawyers, judges, they all tell me, so many judges tell me, I mean, like high-level Court of Appeal judges, Supreme Court justices, as well as many magistrates, they all tell me, all of them, if they don't like it, they're not telling me, but so many of them are telling me how much they love my show. What? Lawyers love my show. What? Yeah, absolutely. So I put that baby to bed. I put it to bed. They love it.
That is so exciting and great that basically you have the support of your professional community behind you. You have the support of the Bahamian public behind you. And so I'm curious about...
Yes. And can I just tell you?
Yeah.
So two things. So I decided that I was going to keep and maintain my persona, my identity as Judge Carroll. So I retired from the judiciary, but I don't appear, if I still practice as a legal consultant at the law firm at Higgs Johnson. So I still practice as a legal consultant. And when I'm there, I am in my role is as a lawyer consultant, right? But outside of that, involved in the show and in the community, I'm Judge Carroll. And one of the judges had asked me about participating in the tennis tournament that's coming up next month, and it's going to be a competition between lawyers and judges. And my colleague says, well, you're a judge, so you will be with the judge. You'll be on the judges team, not on the lawyers team. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So even in the profession and among the judges, they recognize me as a judge and not as in the role of a lawyer. And so, and that's why I maintain that distinction too, so that people could really, I want to be appreciated and known for the expertise and the wisdom and the vision that I can bring because of it.
Yeah, yeah. So I was going to ask you about what is coming next. You mentioned you're taping season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Are people able to watch the taping or be part of the taping? Tell us a little bit more.
So we do accept people to come to be in the audience. They would need to probably send me, the easiest thing is to send me an email at info@judgecarol.net, and then I can provide or a team member can provide the details when the next taping is going to be. So that's info @judgecarol, one word, .net. They can come and they can be part of the audience, sure. And that's going to be sometime over the course of the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was sharing that this conversation was taking place, I asked if anyone had a question that they would submit to you, Judge Carol, and someone did ask. Maggie, if you're watching, this is your question. So Judge Carol, what are your guides for balancing the opportunity to do better with appropriate punishment for misdeeds?
Right. So that sounds like, and I saw when you'd responded, it sounds like maybe they're thinking of a criminal matter, but even in terms of civil cases, what did they say? Misdeeds versus
the opportunity to do better.
Right, the opportunity to do better. So different considerations. So there's obviously so there's a philosophy about punishment, or a jurisprudence, if you will, going back to what we were talking about earlier. And then there's a jurisprudence and approach in relation to, an opportunity to do better. So and definitely in the criminal context, judges would be given guides as to what they can and cannot do. What are the society's expectations? Which would be what society would expect would then be articulated in the legislation. So in the Bahamas, we've moved away from the emphasis being on punishment because we now have the Department of Corrections as a place where people are incarcerated versus a prison. The building is the same, but the name has changed because the philosophy of the purpose of you going there is the same. And then, so it depends on the criminal side, it depends on what the expectations of society are, and then that guides the judge's decision. On the civil side, if we're talking about an incident between parties, in the civil context, the emphasis is not on punishment. So what the law says is that if you have committed a wrong, and the French word being tort for that, so we talk about torts, but if you've committed a wrong, what the law says is that the philosophy is that you try and put the person in the person who suffered in the position they would have been had the wrong not been committed. So you're not looking to make the person suffer for their misdeed, unless in making the sufferer whole, there's pain and discomfort caused to the person who has to make the. So if I have to pay you damages or aggravated damages because I wronged you, then while the judge isn't trying to punish you, you may suffer because, okay, now the law says I have to pay you 10 times. If the damage to you was $1,000 or $100,000, the law says, oh, aggravated damages, pay multiples of that. So not just what you lost, but what you lost and added on. So the law has clear guidelines for how it's supposed to work. But in the civil realm, there's no we're not looking to punish anybody. We're looking to make the person that suffered, we're looking to make them whole as much as you can. So, and then at the same time, though, the law also requires someone to mitigate the damage. So if you suffered loss, then you can't just keep running up charges indefinitely. You can't rent a car. You can't rent the most expensive car. If I knock your car, and so let's say I knock your car, you can't drive to work, so therefore you can't go to work. And so you sit home and then you say, well, I couldn't go to work for a month, so pay me my salary. Well, no, we're not going to do that, because you could have found a different way to go to work. So therefore you rent a car while your car isn't working and you go to work. And so that's mitigating your loss, because you still get to go to work. And then there are levels of what that mitigation looks like. But the emphasis is on putting the person in the position they would have been had the wrong not been committed, not punishing the person who did the wrong on the civil side. And I've already discussed the criminal side.
Yeah. Okay. So having you go through all of that, I think I've got a taste of what it might be like in the social situations you described, where people ask you, what about this? What about that? In terms of a legal situation they might be in the Bahamas. And it reminds me that you are the first person to have this kind of TV show and this sort of public persona, public access as the judge that you can go and ask all these legal questions. So how has that felt for you, being the first in terms of the TV show, but then also being maybe developing this persona or this personality as, oh, ask Judge Carol about that?
Yeah, so that's been really cool. Okay. And I guess I kind of say that now, but I was getting some coaching that first year and a half, because I was like, oh, how it felt kind of like schizophrenic in the sense that, because I had this role with the law firm as a consultant, while at the same time putting myself out there as someone who's, able to offer good advice and to be Judge Carol. And I was like, oh, which one am I going to be? I don't know who I'm going to be. And then it was like, well, yes, I can be both. And they're not conflicting. So I had to do a lot of internal work. And then as I began to really relax into the role and accept it for myself that, hey, this is what I'm calling myself. I'm Judge Carol and I'm cool with it. Then I started to really enjoy it, and I was like, yeah, this is fun. So I go around. And so now I make this joke among my judge friends and other people and other friends, like people that I know, when they see me, they say, hey, Judge Carol. And I'm like, hey, if you're going to call me judge, you have to bow when you see me. I'm like, because when you're in court, that's what we do in the Bahamas. When you're in court and, the judges, in mind you, it's in the courtroom, not on the street. If I see the judge on the street, I'm not necessarily going to bow. But, like to have that respect. Hey, you got to respect me. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's been fun, having that personality, really growing into it and owning it and enjoying it has been cool. And having people recognize me, like we touched on it earlier. And I can say that, as it is happening more and more, and I'm relaxing more and more into the role, I'm really enjoying it. I smile at people now, and when they say that, and I'm like, oh, thank you. I actually receive the compliment, and I'm not like, I'm not so tentative, and I'm like, yeah, I did that. And people say, wow, that's cool. A girlfriend just messaged me, I think yesterday, and say, wow, you're so brave. I'm so proud of you. This is amazing. And I receive it and I say, thank you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I did. Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So do you have any advice for the people that are watching, or anybody really who has a dream for something they've never done before and don't even have a background that would prepare them to do something so audacious, mentioning or reminding everyone of your conservative background? What kind of advice or encouragement might you give to someone who is embarking on a similarly pioneering role journey?
So my advice is based on my experience and my pathway to doing it, which is once having made the commitment to myself, you make your personal commitment to yourself and, find out what work with what you do know, and then talk to people who you think might have information that can be helpful for you. So I did a lot of that. I spoke to different people, got more information about the industry, found out what I needed, and then found out how to get what I needed. And don't be afraid to push through the discomfort. I heard that so many times on different coaching calls, and I was just like, oh, what? But you're uncomfortable, but if you believe in yourself, you just do it anyway, and you just keep going, because there's so much that you don't know and that you're just going to keep finding out. So just keep pushing through the discomfort, keep learning, keep trying new things. And what was uncomfortable for you at one time, like with me and like LinkedIn? Remember, I was like, I don't know how to use this. I picked a social media platform, the one that I was most comfortable with, and decided that I was going to learn it. And that's what I did. I've just been learning it. Now I'm, so much more comfortable with it. So keep pushing, keep striving, and things that you were uncomfortable with before, you'll become comfortable with. And I think my experience with the show, having done the first season, certainly shows that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Quick penultimate question. Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned coaching a couple of times. So for people who aren't familiar with coaching, what kind of coaching are you talking about, and what role has that played in your journey?
Yes. So thank you, Gabrielle, for introducing me to coaching, because you're the person that introduced me to coaching, life coaching. And so it's about really exploring. So coaching is an opportunity to explore what's going on in your own head and in your own heart. So we know about, athletic coaching, where you go to the coach and they work with you where you are and take you up to another level to be a better version, stronger, smarter, faster version of yourself. So a life coach, there are life coaches, business coaches, different kinds of coaches. And so I did coaching with a number of different programs to take me from where I was at to explore what was in my head, challenge myself, and not just keep hearing my own voice in my head and in my heart, and then helping me to just forge ahead, to take that next step. And that's been a huge aspect, because I don't know that to be really honest, I don't know that I could have done this without coaching, because you're just in your head so much. You're just inside your own head. And even as a believer, like, I'm a Christian, my faith is very important to me. I've always been a person that prays, but somehow you still stay inside your own head, or you're waiting, Lord, show me the way, Lord, show me the way. And you're looking, but you're not seeing anything because you're just inside your head. So it really helps to kind of open the windows, open the doors, let the air in, helps you to see, enlightens your path so that you can move forward along with, my faith journey. So look up a coach, find a coach. People can message me privately. They can message you if they want to get ideas of maybe who to go to and that kind of thing. But it's been huge, and I recommend it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've also been coached. I currently have a coach.
And you coach me with my business, with my marketing, which is amazing. You're a great coach.
Thank you. It's just really valuable to have another person objectively look at what's going on and give you feedback on where you're being limited, where the strategic areas or opportunities that you're not seeing, and then reminding you of, this is your goal, this is what you said you wanted to do, so let's go. Holding you accountable to get there.
Yes, absolutely.
So my final question is, in anticipation of season 2, when are you going to be done taping? When might we expect it?
So the plan is that season 2 will begin airing in September of this year. I don't know the specific date, but maybe probably the first or second Wednesday in September, because the show for the first season, it would air on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. So on the ZNS network at 8 o'clock. So immediately following the news, like prime time, baby. Can you imagine?
Yes.
I just shot straight to the top, right? So I imagine it would also be Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on the ZNS network. And then they would do rebroadcasts the following week on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. in the afternoons. And apparently it also comes on Saturdays sometimes. But like I've had people message me randomly on a Saturday and say, "Oh, I just saw you on TV." And I was like, "Really? I didn't know it came on Saturdays."
Yeah.
But that's in their control. I don't control, that. The timing necessarily, but I do know that people can look for it on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m.
If they're in the Bahamas.
If they're in the
But
Bahamas.
if you're not in the Bahamas, you can also find it on
YouTube. So if you look up Justice with Judge Carol, it pops right up. And please search it, because it looks like it's, people are searching it a lot. So it's the ZNet network. They have also a YouTube channel, so it comes on their YouTube channel, which is great because I can direct people to find it there.
Yeah. So the first season had 10 episodes. Will season 2 have 10 episodes as well?
Yeah, I think actually it had 11 because there were two scenarios in one.
Oh, okay.
But I think we're aiming for 13 this go round.
Ooh, more cases. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, and sharing your story with everyone watching. It's been, as your daughter, it's been incredible. I remember when you told us being me and my siblings, that you wanted to have a TV show, and just being like, what? Where did this come from? And here we are now, friends and family and old classmates and colleagues text us and say, "Oh yeah, Mom, Judge Carol's show," and
yes,
you've introduced a whole new way of being into our world. But it's been really fun, and hearing about the contribution that you envision making, that you're already making in terms of the jurisprudence conversation, it's just been so valuable, and it's so worth it. That I'm so glad that you did, because of the value to our community, to our society, and it's only going to continue to grow. This is literally just the beginning.
I believe that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I believe that. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a really great pleasure, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to share.
All right, so everyone, look up again Justice with Judge Carol on YouTube, and if you want to email about being in the audience, you can email. It was info@judgecarol.net. Right?
And they can, if they want to learn more about me, they can go to my website, which is www.judgecarol.net. Although I don't think you need the www these days, but judgecarol.net.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. And if you're a Bahamian watching this, enjoy the rest of your Independence holiday. Bye.
Yes. Bye.